All right, so wanted to talk about some of the tropes in family sitcom kind of shows and how I would say that they sort of point towards antinatalism. Um, Everybody in these shows are, in my opinion, just miserable, like most of the time. They're just existing in like a constant state of tension in the household, and I understand that's mostly for like narrative purposes, but I also think it's just sort of true. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that more. But yeah, what I find out about these shows is they point out all the like bullshit that people go through, and they sort of like dramatize it and put that window there for people to be like, oh yeah, this is a lot of bullshit. But then they sort of like give the out, because what they'll do is put in these climactic moments where it's like an emotional release that's like they build up all this tension, and then they do this emotional release where like maybe somebody apologizes or maybe somebody takes some like symbolic action to right some sort of like emotional wrong that's been done, or maybe normally that would like sometimes coincide with a big life milestone, for these people, like a Kodak moment, like having another kid or buying a house or moving or taking junior off to college, or um, you know, junior winning the sport ball tournament or whatever, or going to prom or something. Um, so, yeah, I just want to talk a little bit more about that. I guess first to analyze the sources of some of these tension and how antinatalism could basically just solve those right out of the gate, before the gate is even open, before the gate exists. Um, you know, the parents in these shows are always hate their jobs. They're overworked, stressed, working at a job that gives them no money, respect, opportunities, anything. So that's probably the first source of tension is, they don't like their work. They're overworked and they're poor. And a big part of why they're poor is because they, most of the time in these shows, they have multiple children. They have like 3 or 4 kids. I would say 3+ is common, in these kinds of like family, sitcoms that I'm talking about. And so they have these 3 kids, plus they're poor, they are overworked. So that's kind of like the first source of tension. I think, the next source of tension is that they often just argue with each other a lot. Like the husband and wife seem to have like a really um, bad relationship in most of these things, and it's sort of like laughed off as them being quirky and lovable, but I mean it's like really unhealthy most of the time, where they like yell at each other and they like cold shoulder each other and they like hide information from each other, and like I get that it's like make believe, but I don't know, like I'm I mean, like I can suspend disbelief and I can watch it and be like whatever, but it's like not good. I think it actually does point out like, how a lot of people's relationships are, where you're like living in the same house for a long time, for decades, but you're not necessarily like connecting, or you're so stressed out that you're taking shots at each other all the time, and little tiny shots, over decades, quietly, just a quiet tension in the household. That's common, but in a lot of these shows too, it's like a direct yelling, or it's very negative. So a lot of these sitcoms couples, they have really bad relationships. And to point out to like these people in these shows will try to have some release, of this tension. So like often, the man will want to go out and have a drink with his man friends, and maybe they will want to watch a sports game, or whatever. And so like but there, or the woman will want to go on a shopping trip, and these are very gender normative things, but these shows tend to be very gender normative, so I'm not like making this stuff up. Maybe the woman wants to go to like a Tupperware party or something. Again, not my selection, but and it's always a conflict. It's always like, or they want to do date night. They want to do the parent date night and make it special, and it's Valentine's Day or it's their anniversary. And but the common thread is like these people are it's always a big issue for them to go like do this one small thing with their friends, or for them to take a date night or do like one fun thing because they have to get babysitters, or they if they leave the kids home alone with certain supervision, bad things are going to happen. And there's just this message that like by you going out and spending time with friends, you're not committed to the family, and you're detracting from the family, and you're irresponsible. And it's like really odd, really unhealthy, I think. And I think I see a lot of people who sort of just like become homebodies, and their one thing that they do is be part of their family, but then they don't actually have anything to contribute really, other than being like a Netflix blob kind of thing. So like, because they're not out in the world, they don't have friends, they don't have movement in their own lives, like they don't really have anything to say. So anyway, point is, sources of tension, you've got the overworked, stressed people, you've got marital tension. I think also in these shows, the parents, I guess they're the grandparents, like the boomer generation, tend to, there's always like the overbearing, sort of like judgmental, traditionally minded, grandma or grandpa or whatever in these shows, who like maybe they say like racist bullshit, or they, are always like popping off on these little like reminding people like, oh, you didn't measure up, like, oh, you guys should have done this, you should have done this, you should have bought that house like I told you to, you should have, like, I feel like in those shows, like there's always like that judgmental older generation, and so that too is another source of tension, where the parents are wanting to live up to their parents' standards, or have a healthy relationship with their own parents, who like, you know, are often again portrayed as quirky, but are actually just like unhealthy and judgmental and bad. Now, I guess I would say maybe the biggest source of tension probably is, the kids themselves, because, as a child, you're just like doing all this dumb shit, and making life harder for everybody, because you don't really know what's going on, and people are kind of inept at guiding you. So that's a source of tension. Like, like Junior accidentally got in the car and turned it on, and backed into our neighbor's fence. What are we gonna do? So there's things like that where like they've got to like sort of like handle the ineptitude from the children, and that causes tension. They also often like, the fact that like the kid is like going through school and job selection and dating and socializing and trying to figure themselves out and trying to figure out where they want to go in life. That's a huge source of tension for them and for like everyone around them. Because they're always just trying to measure up. They're always just trying to get like approval. But they're also trying to like express themselves in a way that is unique and like authentic to themselves. But those two things are normally at odds. Normally, if they express themselves, then they will not get approval from their parents. But if they do not express themselves, then they feel all bottled up and shitty, and like fake. So it's normally they end up expressing themselves and just being like, trying to come to terms with it. Let's see here. So I guess those are mostly the sources of tension that I see, and what, again, so like what they end up doing to try to like make this all seem like worth it and like leave the viewer with like a good feeling, is normally they'll have some problem. They'll build up a ton of tension between the family members, and the family members will all take shots at each other, and tension builds, they hurt each other's feelings. Then at the end, again, I mentioned this before, but just to wrap it up here, at the end, they will sort of have this big climactic apology alongside a, major life milestone event a lot of the time, and to give that feeling of like closure, release. Now, and that is supposed to sort of like justify that all being worth it, I guess, because it's like supposedly this like cathartic growth, connection experience that these people share. And to me, just antinatalism, like, solves, like, I just view this as a big problem. Like, everybody, these people are all just trying to, like, solve the problem of existence. Because, like, basically existing is just, like, one big problem where, like, it's made up of many problems where you have to work and work and work and try to, like, make the little problems go away until you die and then the big problem ends. So, like, but yeah, so I see especially the kids, but also the parents just, like, they're existing, so they're having to try to solve all these little problems. And obviously, like, the parents, if they hadn't had these kids in the first place, if they hadn't made the problems in the first place, then the problems wouldn't have to be solved, then the kid wouldn't have the overbearing shitty teacher, and the kid wouldn't have the get the romantic rejection, and they wouldn't not make the team or whatever. Kid is just trying to, like, they don't know what the hell's going on, and they're just trying to, like, solve the problem of existence. The parents, they are also mostly clueless, and they're just sort of, like, blindly thrashing around and trying to solve their problem of existence. And everybody's just hurting everybody all the time in these shows. And it's just like, it seems to me obvious that most of the time the parents in these shows would be much better off if, instead of having, like, 3+ kids because everybody else does it, or because it was, like, an accident, or it's what the older generation expects, like, I think they would be so much better off if they had just, like, spent more time in their careers, like, enjoyed developing their relationship more, like, left themselves, like, a lot of slack, a lot of, like, empty time to just chill and de-stress and work out and have hobbies and stuff, like, extra money. So, like you imagine Hal and Lois from Malcolm in the Middle, and a child-free lifestyle, they would just be doing much better. And those sons all just seem like they had a bad time. So, like, it'd be better for everybody involved, really. So I don't know, just to me, these shows, like, they're supposed to be heartwarming and all that stuff, but to me, they just are like, damn, this sucks. Like, better to just not do this whole exploit. Better not to put people through this problem and this strife and this, like, confusion and big pain in the ass. Especially if we're all headed for the same place at that, like, which is non-existence, like, just perfect chill, eternal oblivion. Why put people through the strife? Like, why make them have to just, like, push through all this stuff? It just doesn't make any sense to me. Like, just leave them in eternal oblivion. Try to make your life as, like, comfortable as possible until you're in eternal oblivion yourself, so I don't know, that's just, I feel like the shows really point to that. So I think I'm going to call it a day. I don't know why this video keeps getting so long, but I will talk to you in the next one.